have Dr. Tim Elmore on. And the reason is his organization, Growing Leaders. What's brilliant about it is he's the foremost expert on what it takes and understands today's generation of youth. And I know many of you have probably sit out there and lamented to your friends and your colleagues, like, oh, this group is just tough. And well, we got the guy here who's got an understanding about it. And the reason why I wanted to have that conversation was we all know that they're unique. And every generation that's followed the previous generation has been unique in their own way. So, Doc, thanks for coming on.
You bet. My pleasure.
So let's just get right into it. The Millennials, Generation Z, whatever we're calling them, they're unique. They're unique. Tell us why they're so unique. I'm not saying they're wrong. They're just unique.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you're spot on when you say every emerging generation down through history has been unique in their own way. We grew up with shared experiences, shared music, shared tragedies, shared heroes. And so the Millennials had their set in the 80s and 90s when they were children and they became young adults. Gen Z would be the youngest population that we're measuring today. They're basically the kids that have grown up in the 21st century. They don't remember a day without social media. And what I would say, kind of in a nutshell to answer your question, is there's been external changes and internal changes to these young people that make them very different. So the external changes, I'll just make this quick, but think about the world since the turn of the century. A lot of good things, but boy, it's been a little bit of a rocky road. There have been 2 economic downturns. So as children, they only remember a time where mom's looking for a job, or, unemployment's high, or, we just don't have the money to get that new iPhone.
And probably really, I'm going to interrupt, but probably a really dramatic shift there that's probably created a little of the fragility in the workplace is that your generation, my generation, we're the same age. We thought about people would go to work at Exxon and they'd stay there for life, and they'd have pensions, and the lack of loyalty of those organizations is high.
No doubt. In fact, someone once said the corporate ladder has turned into the corporate lily pad.
Yeah.
So they're hopping around like a frog from job to job. They had 5 jobs in their 20s. Yeah. And some call it the gig economy. So I'll do a gig here for a year and a half and a gig there for 2 years, because they get bored quick. And it's not only that, but they're searching for the perfect job. And I guess we did too. But so the external change.
We work ourselves into the perfect job through the organization we started with.
Very often. Yeah. I stayed under one boss for 2 decades. Yeah. So it's quite different.
People now would say, what's wrong with you?
Yeah. Exactly. That's true.
Right. Yeah, what's wrong with you?
The external changes are the economic downturn, terrorism, racial unrest, uncertainty. It's just been a little bit more of a complex world, especially with social media bombarding us with all these details. Yeah. But then the internal changes that I think many coaches don't know is the screens have literally rewired our brains, and particularly kids. So from sleeplessness, I know we all battle trying to make sure the athletes get enough sleep, to we're being overwhelmed with 10,000 messages a day. Literally 10,000 messages a day is what the average adolescent would take in. So I guess I'm trying to build a sense of empathy for the coach. We do get it frustrated. I do too. But I also need to remember, wow, they're growing up in a very different world, and I need to make sure that I lead them to become the best person they can be on my team.
And in a generation as a coach that's kind of really different. I mean, I look at this generation of athlete, and they're so much more resourced. They can get to an expert. They can get to you. They can get to me. They can get to a pitching coach in a second. And all they have to do is send a direct message, and people connect, and and it's amazing. But as coaches, they're having to abandon a little bit of I had to work so hard to get to this place. And these kids are so resourceful. Like I had a kid today actually ask me, so do they have regular books in the library on campus? And it made me sit there and think, I was like, I wonder if they still do, because everything's going digital.
Yeah. And not only digital, mobile. So on my phone, not just my computer, I can get the answer. This is interesting. You may be aware of the fact that in the last couple of books I've written, I give a generational chart in the book where I show the builder generation, the baby boomer generation, Gen X, millennials, and now Gen Z. If I were to describe in a phrase the attitude toward authority of each of these generations. This may be kind of fun as a spark for conversation. So my mom and dad's generation, way back in the 30s, it was respect authority. Those were the good old days. And then for the boomers, it was kind of replace authority. We're going to become large and in charge, and we're going to take over. And we did. For the Xers, it was endure authority. So the Xers were a little more jaded, a little more skeptical. They grew up during the Vietnam War and Watergate and all those cruddy things. For millennials, it was choose them. I think millennials as young adults, even today, life is a cafeteria, and I'm picking and choosing. I wonder if a Generation Z athlete were to be honest with us, they might say, my attitude toward authority is not sure I need them.
Yes.
Because they, like you said, they can look at a phone, they can look at their computer screen. I got a personal trainer. I got 3 online sources that I go to. And a coach is going, what the, I'm your coach, for Pete's sake. But
well, that's why you see, but that's why you see coaches, when they choose them and then they choose to reject them. And you see it in athletic departments where a group will come in and say, don't feel real safe with them. Don't feel like I'm getting the best out of them. And next thing you know, they've rejected and really thrown away the coach.
Yeah, you're right. Yep. So what I often say to coaches, in fact, every quarter I'm with the new SEC coaches, and I say this: we must build bridges of relationship that can bear the weight of truth. And what I mean by that is, if I have to say some hard things, and every coach knows you're going to have to say some hard things, I need to earn my right. This may grind at listeners here, but I build a bridge of relationship that's strong enough that when I have to say some hard truth, they go, well, I know he believes in me. I know he loves me. I know. And I feel like parenting. It's the same thing, isn't it? But once you got a teenager, oh my gosh, good luck with that one,
Yeah.
So I really believe, I know that's like old fashioned.
No, it's not. And you got me thinking here. And when I know we're doing a video conference, so when I think I look away, but the reason why I'm thinking is what I like about your stuff and your work and your commentary and Brett Basham in my office, we've had a lot of conversations about you, is that so many of the books written about leadership and culture are written to the leader and forget the individual contributor. But you speak to the contributor, and which I love. I think that's so important because, it's like I kind of get flustered when I hear people say, just love your people and they're going to respond. Just tell them the vision. And that's not true. You have to build that. I love what you said, build that bridge, because what I have found with employing young people, Generation Zs and the Millennials, and also working in athletic departments and coaches, is that we have to be so adaptable, but we also have to invite them on our journey.
That's right.
It's not about telling them, because what you said about, the old generation, right? I think about old coaches and coaches that are no longer with us. And there was this fear of walking out on their practice field.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
You're right.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, and it goes back to what we just said. This is an empowered generation thanks to technology. They feel very empowered. And so sometimes the coach might go, can I have a little respect here? And I believe you deserve it. I really do. I think in today's world, we need to be thinking, I'm going to earn it. I'm going to act like none of these athletes are scholarshiped, and I'm going to earn it, even though I believe you do deserve it. So let me give you another phrase. I think effective coaches use what is cultural to say what is timeless. Let me say that again. We use what is cultural, meaning the world they already understand, to connect it to a world they don't yet understand. The timeless truths like discipline and virtue and ethics, where we're not cheating to get ahead. I'm not lying about the weight I just lifted. And by the way, one of the concerns I have of this emerging generation, even though I believe in them, is there's an all moralism. I don't think there's really a right and wrong. It's do whatever you got to do to get what you want. And I think you and I both go, I don't know if I want those people leading the company in 20 years if they go do whatever I want to get what I want. So I know that's a kind of an off track thing, but
but that's good because you're right, because they're so resourceful that the line of integrity is blurred. And in their mind is, if I'm going to choose authority, then I'll just choose somebody who agrees with me.
That's true. And don't we do that today in
100%
culture?
We do. Yeah.
Yeah. So research out of the University of Notre Dame was released some years ago. 3 out of every 4 college students in America admit to cheating to get through college.
Yeah.
Now, maybe we did too, but I mean, not 1 out of 10, 3 out of 4. So it's a very pragmatic generation. Do what you got to do to get what you need. In fact, these students in the survey said it's only wrong if you get caught.
Yeah.
So coaches, consider the ramifications of that. I will admit it's wrong if I get caught, because I know that doesn't look very good.
It's Wolf of Wall Street. It's Wolf of Wall
I
Street.
know. This is exactly what's happened on Wall
Yeah.
Street. So I want better for these teenagers and 20-somethings. I think we can do better. And coaches, yes, you want to win games, matches, and meets for sure. But beyond that, what if we built great men and women who had a moral compass inside, who gave us their best? That's all you can expect. But you got the best out of them because they so bought into your program, because you believed in them. I really think it's that two-way street that we got to establish that may have been lost with some old school coaching.
It's so refreshing to hear that. And it's also they're not mutually exclusive from success.
Yes, that's right.
And we can succeed by doing it right. And it may take a little bit more effort, but it takes a lot more effort to undo lack of integrity than it does purpose and discipline.
You're right. Ask any Division I athletic department that's under the NCAA scrutiny right now. Oh, you can't undo that. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. So you're right. It does take longer. It's a little more messy. One of our habitudes is, I think, a great picture, if you don't mind.
Hey, can we talk about habitudes for a minute and let our listeners know what?
Yeah.
Because there's an interest right now with James Clear's book about the atomic habits and a lot of thought about habits. Yeah. Can you talk about habitudes and then go into your thought there?
Okay, sure. So habitudes is, for lack of a better word, it's content. It's a curriculum that sparks great conversations that we think students need to have. So I really think it's both for the coach and the young athlete. But habitudes are simply images that form leadership habits and attitudes. It's a way of teaching a timeless principle, but through the power of a picture, because this is a very visual generation. They come to us as screenagers, not teenagers, So anyway, the image that I love, that really is what we're talking about here, is an image we call the velvet covered brick. Now, the photograph we have for this one on the screen is literally that. It's kind of a crusty brick wrapped in red velvet. So you can see both aspects. Here's what the velvet brick communicates to me. And coaches, I hope you can take this in and steal it. There's velvet on the outside of that brick. That means I start with velvet. Velvet is soft, plush, smooth, feels good when you rub it against your skin. And then inside, that brick's kind of hard and cold. It's hard. I believe that both grace and truth are part of our leadership. I think we're tough and tender. So we lead with velvet. I am responsive to you, but then we also have brick. I am demanding of you. If we can be responsive and demanding, I think that's a quality leader down through the ages.
100%. And that's consistent with early psychological research among youth development, is that parents need to be demanding and reinforcing.
Yes, that's so true.
Yeah.
So our kids, they need to know, Dad believes in me, but he expects a lot of me.
Yeah, and it's going to be a lot of work.
That's right. Exactly. That's right. It's not going to be easy on Tuesday at practice. So let me just talk heart to heart for a minute. We want to jump to the brick, do we not? We're mad, we would just gotta do what I tell you to do, execute.
Yeah.
But I think if we're willing to lead with velvet and say, I want you to know I support you, I believe in you, I got your back, I really, really believe the best in you, that gets me the right to say, what in the are you doing, And I feel like I talk to coaches so often that go, if I were honest, I just want to do the brick. In fact, can I just be honest? I just talked to one athletic director who started his career as a coach and now got moved up. But he said, Tim, if I were honest, I'm a brick.
Brick.
I have no velvet in me.
Yeah.
And he said, I think this explains why my athletes aren't responding to me. They're not following me. I'm going elsewhere on a screen for my guidance rather than.
But it's interesting. So last week I went down, and as we record this for our listeners, that it's coming. I went down and spent an hour and a half with my old coach, Skip Burtman, and played for Skip. And if you look at anybody who played for Skip, I mean, there was a lot of friction that happened in there. I mean, he pushed us out of our comfort zones and challenged us. But the men coming back to him and just wanting to spend time with him and just wanting to be in his period. And we sat there and talked. And he said, Brett, there was a couple moments in the podcast that were just awe-inspiring. And I'm sitting there and I'm listening, and he's like, I was so invested in developing, but I had to have kids that could handle me coming after them, because I believed in what you could become, but I knew you weren't there yet. But I also wanted you to know that I had you. Like, even if you weren't going to ever play for me, I was invested in you because I believed in you. And I'm sitting there, and the videographer had sent me a clip of the podcast, and he said, I want you to look at this. He said, he's talking and your eyes are so fixated, but you're so connected.
Yes.
That's what you're talking about. There was a velvetness to him. It wasn't very thick because he wanted to get to the brick, but he knew how to work you to say, look, I know you're not having the best time and I'm here for you. And he would do things like call your parents without you knowing about it, just to give them an update.
Yeah.
Very velvet.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's huge. That's relationship, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And I think he intuitively, and if you think back down through the years, the greatest coaches we admire, Pat Summitt, John Wooden, these were velvet bricks, lots of brick.
But don't people misinterpret that though? And oftentimes just see the brick. Like they look at, you're where I'm at today, like Coach Saban and and they all the brick, but yet they don't see the other side.
Yeah, you're right. They don't. You're right. And that's the belief side. So can I give another brand new habitude?
Go for it. Rip it.
So this is brand new, but I felt like I needed to come up with an image when we need to give hard feedback. That specific topic, coaches are having to give hard feedback. This has informed me ever since I thought of it. It's called Surgeons and Vampires. Now, I know that's kind of wacko, so stay with me.
Let's go. Let's do it.
If you stop and think about it, both draw blood, don't they?
Yeah.
I mean, in fact, you don't really look forward to either one.
No.
I've never been on the other side of a vampire, but, vampires, oh my gosh, they sneak up on you in the dark. You're unsuspecting. You're bitten. Pardon me, I'm being metaphorical here. And you never recover. Surgeons, it's a well-lit room. It's planned ahead. I'm not going to slice up your whole body. I'm going to surgically take that tumor out, and you're going to be better for it when it's done. Is that not a picture of giving hard feedback? So the research, I'm sure but I want to just give it, is this. When research was done actually on young teenagers, so it may not be your age group that you're coaching everybody, but young teenagers, they had given papers back from the work that students had turned in class, and they were trying to test what feedback could you give those students that would elicit the most effort when it was done? What gets them to try again? What gets them to rewrite the paper? So they tried hundreds of responses on the part of teachers. The one that worked best, the thought is magical. Here it is. I'm giving you these comments because I have high expectations of you, and I know you can reach them. I need to say that again. I'm giving you these comments because I have high expectations of you, and I know you can reach them. Now, I know that you may not say that on a football field, but the thought is what's magical, not the words. They know he's being hard on me, but here's why. He so knows there's something inside that he doesn't see yet, and he wants to pull it out. That's exactly what you were saying just a minute ago with your coach.
And it reminds me of two scenarios. One, the most important, my dad was retired military, very strong man. I was an only child, and I remember I've spoken about it a lot, so people who've listened to it know it. But when I went back to his in-laws, my mom's family's 50th wedding anniversary, and they were backwoods country. I mean, they were in the hills of Tennessee, and God love them. But we were sitting at the VFW hall for the party, and this elderly lady walked up behind me, and I was in college at the time. I was playing ball at LSU, and I was talking to my dad, and my dad was a stoic man, a great man, just a heart of gold. And this lady put her hand on my shoulder and says, Brett, so good to see you. And I turned like this to him and I said, hey, how you doing? So good to meet you. See you again, whatever. And we talked, we had a conversation with her, and then we sit back down, and my dad says, can I talk to you outside for a second? I'm like, yeah, sure. And he took me outside and he said, first of all, don't ever do that again. I expect more of you. When a woman comes up to talk to you, you stand up, you look her in the eye, you shake her hand, you be gracious to her. You reflect our name better than that. And he did it without ever raising his voice. Then he said, you ready to go back inside? I'm like, absolutely. Look, I never forgot that thing. And it was done in a way of like, listen, I expect more of you. and
Yes.
I'm going to
Yes.
use this as a teaching. I'm not going to embarrass you. I'm not going to do anything. I just want you to know that I expect more of you. And
Yeah.
and I think coaches sometimes we forget that just a simple, even a wink at somebody to say you're
Yeah.
doing a good job, or
That's right.
hey,
That's right.
I want to see a little more, I expect a little bit more out of you.
Yep. Yeah. It can be very small and very short. Like you said, a
Yeah.
wink. That seems crazy, but that communicates something like he gets me. He's connecting with me right here. So as a result of that feedback that I just noted, surgeons and vampires, it seems like as a human being, I'm naturally prone to be a vampire.
Yeah.
I'm frustrated. I've had it up to here.
Everybody's
I'm
taking
mad.
things from me all the time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't know what I've been through. So we want to vent. So here's my belief. And I'd love for listeners now to think and evaluate yourself as you think about giving hard feedback to young athletes. Do you give it out of relief or belief? When I do it out of relief, I'm relieving myself of the frustration, the anger, the resentment, whatever I have. And that's natural. It's very normal. Good leaders lead out of belief. I may feel that frustration, but like you just described your dad, can we talk for a minute? Goes outside, doesn't raise his voice. Because I believe in you. I believe there's something better than what I just saw in there. You stand up in front of a lady. Wow. And you said you've never forgotten that. That was not yesterday. So I guess I want to encourage listeners. You're going to be prone to do it out of relief and just venting and yelling. And we see coaches yelling. I do realize that happens. But I'd love for your student athletes to remember you as a person that led out of belief, not relief. So
Yeah. Let me turn the tables on you for a minute. I want to know how you got moving in this line of work, because you're making an impact, and it's a very segmented market for where you're at. And I think that's really cool, because you're not trying to go out there and be anything to everything. You've got a very unique area and you've owned it. And there's a lot of listeners of this podcast that are coaches or young entrepreneurs and are trying to develop their line. And I always like to talk to somebody like you. Is like, how did you get there? How did you build this?
Yeah. Well, what you're describing is one of the habitudes right behind me here, rivers and floods.
Okay.
I was a flood in the early part of my career. I was going every direction, doing everything, wanting to change the world by noon on Friday,
Yeah.
But my river, my flow really developed. There was a couple of pieces to it. One, in the mid 1980s, 1983 to be exact, I went on staff with Dr. John Maxwell. So many people know that name. John is a New York Times best-selling author of umpteen dozen leadership books. He's a guru on leadership for corporate America. As I worked under him, I was really John's, I helped write and do events, but I was John's student guy. I was, guy that was working in the schools. And all the while, John Maxwell was teaching corporate America how to be a good leader, but they were already 48 years old. They've ruined a marriage and maybe ruined a company in their process. I thought, what could happen if we got this to a teenager who hadn't ruined anything yet, but they start thinking and acting with good habits and attitudes, like you mentioned. So Growing Leaders is a nonprofit organization that is all about the emerging generation, and specifically helping coaches, teachers, employers, parents, anybody that's leading the next generation really do it well. So this emerging population becomes the greatest America's ever seen. But you're right, it's a niche. It's way smaller than John Maxwell's niche. But
his was a niche that bled out. Ryan Holiday wrote a really good blog one time about writing books, and he said, you don't write books for profit. You write books to fill your bookshelf. And he goes, what I mean by that is the book you write today is going to sell the book you write 5 ago.
Yeah.
And that's what I always think people about making an impact is the person you made an impact 5 ago is going to reinforce the impact you're making today.
Yes, very true. Yeah, no doubt about it. So I agree. Growing Leaders is a nonprofit organization, and we prove it every day. But we believe in the cause, and you just mentioned it. We believe in the cause that we're after, and we want to be the best friend a coach has in terms of just knowing how do you lead this next generation.
What's the next generation? What's the next one?
Well, social scientists are already dubbing the ones following Generation Z the Alpha generation. So evidently we went from Z back to A. I thought we might go to double A. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And who knows what they're going to turn out to be. But I will say this is kind of intriguing to me. If you look back over the last 100 years, every generation that came through, all the ones I just listed, in fact, a few minutes earlier, there is a pendulum that swings back and forth in terms of the tone of each generation as each one reacts to the previous. So my mom and dad's generation was about caution. They grew up in the Great Depression and World War II.
Yeah.
The baby boomers, confidence. Gen X, caution. Millennials, confidence. Gen Z, caution. The anxiety that Gen Z, I'm sure coaches see this, angst and anxiety and depression right issues, mental health issues, huge concern for me. And by the way, if we have a minute, let me share another big concern I have for this young population. Dr. Julian Rotter did some incredible research in the 1950s. You know that name. His research is way big, but let me just talk about one piece. He gave language to the idea of whether a person has an external locus of control or an internal locus of control. Now, listeners, let me explain real quick. If you have an internal locus of control, that means you believe that you are responsible for your success in life. It's up to you. We've all said that phrase, if it is to be, it's up to me.
Yep.
It's what you want every athlete to have. You want them to own their position, their team, their role this season. The person with the external locus of control, they go, you know what? It's really somebody outside of me that's in control. It's my coach, it's my mom, they're often overwhelmed and they're putting the control in someone else's hands. Now, if we were all to be honest, we do know that life comes to us and it's a little of both. There are things that are out of our control and there's things that are in control. Here's what concerns me. Since 2002, the students that have taken Rotter's assessment, there's been a leaning toward external locus of control ever since the last 15 years. Now, when I ask the question why, there's a lot of reasons why. And I keep going back to this, but social media, they're bombarded with so many messages. They're going, what could I do in this crazy world right now? What can I do? I feel like coaches, we've got to reestablish an internal locus of control. You are in control of your success. Yeah, things are going to happen. Weather, bad refs, injuries, it's all going to happen. But you own what's yours. If we can build that internal locus of control, not only do we have better teams right now, we have better adults when they graduate.
To your point, I mean, I'm seeing when I'm in an immersive situation, I'm seeing about 50% of my athletes having some sort of, it may be subsyndromal, but it's enough anxiety to make me pay a lot of attention. Yeah. But as much as we see this environment, this generation is empowered. They're empowered, but they're really not in control. They struggle with control, and they feel at demand, having to live up to external demands constantly. I mean, we've seen what's happened in the Instagram world. A value of a like on Instagram is psychologically unbelievable. And so while they feel empowered, they don't feel in total control. Whereas, our generations, we went out and rode our bike in the neighborhood and we'd play in our backyards and we compete in our backyards. And we felt like we had our paradox of control our illusion of control seemed more enhanced.
Yes, no doubt about it.
I think this group has too many choices and not enough control over their outcomes, and why we think that they're also extremely empowered.
No, you just said a mouthful. So let me volley back.
Yeah.
This is so true what you're saying. Think about the world they grew up in as children before they got to us as staff and coaches. Their parents were very prescriptive in their leadership. I'm prescribing every step along the way. Don't forget to fill out the form. Don't forget your backpack. Don't forget your gym shorts. Don't forget grandma's birthday on Friday. Don't forget the test on Tuesday. So kids start learning to lean on adults. And we wanted the best for them. So we said, we'll dictate, we'll prescribe. It is not good for a kid to have everything prescribed for them. In fact, the more they grow older, the more they need to have a sense of a control. Like you said, going out and dirt bikes on the back lawn or whatever, I don't know. But they have very little time that is not prescribed or supervised by an adult. So that's one.
Yeah.
But I feel like what we've got to do is to begin to use a term. It's called metacognition.
Oh, yeah.
We've got to have these student athletes own that practice. Maybe you turn over part of the practice to your juniors and seniors or to your leaders, whatever age they are. But I'm telling you, we've got to recover this thing of ownership in students. And by the way, if I can toss this in, this is such a huge topic for us at Growing Leaders. We're going to be hosting next month, December 2 and 3, a roundtable for athletics where we're talking about how do we build ownership better and engage
Oh, wow.
students better in this process. So
Yeah.
feel free to come if this interests you.
Yeah, absolutely.
December leaders in Atlanta. Yeah.
Yeah. To your point, it's so true, right? Is that coaches often give ownership about in probably the wrong things. They give ownership as to like uniforms, or I've had a coach that tell me it's like, we're giving so much ownership. They're choosing where we stop to eat, but we don't have enough choices at that rest stop. So we have to stop at another place. And I'm like, you're giving them the wrong sense of control. They're dying for control, but allow them to earn control. Allow them to get that from an empowered choice versus, I'm going to throw a fit because I don't like this type of food. I remember a young athlete having an argument with the nutritionist saying as a freshman that they wanted to be on the food committee. And they were like, that's something that 4th and 5th year players do. Well, no, I don't like this. And I think I need to be on that. And we were shocked. First of all, the guts of the player to say it in front of a large audience, but he really felt that he could make a contribution despite the fact that he hadn't even been through a season yet. Yeah.
Yeah. No, can I volley back on this?
Oh, yeah.
This
please.
is a huge. So I think part of the dilemma, and coaches, just think about this when you're listening here and pondering. I think we give choices, but the stakes are low, and we need to raise the stakes. Here's why.
Yeah, that's a good point.
When I study adolescence 100 years ago, well, first of all, the word adolescence is about 100 years old. Back in the 1800s, we didn't use the word adolescence. You're either a child or a young adult. It's one or the other. You're either a man or a boy. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So we created adolescence as a stage of life, and it makes sense. There is a stage of life during our teen years, but we were so afraid for the safety of our children. We brought the stakes are low. Choose the restaurant we go to, Bobby. Going, what the heck? I think when I look back at adolescence 100 years ago, think about it. It's 2018. 100 years ago, World War I is ending, okay? 17-year-olds were leading armies on the battlefield. 4-year-olds were doing age-appropriate chores around the house. By 9, you're working the farm. By 11, you're leading the work on the farm. 14-year-olds were driving cars, for Pete's sake. So I'm saying back then, maybe the reason we were able to win World War I, the stakes were higher for a teenager. And now we're letting them choose the restaurant, the Instagram profile. I'm going, let's do better than this. Let's lead them better. Now, do they need to get ready? Of course. We need to get them ready for the stakes as higher. But this should be our goal.
They have too many choices. I mean, I asked somebody the other day, I said, why is it when we're at rock bottom, we're so much happier? And one of the reasons is because we only have one choice forward.
Yes.
But when we get successful, and look at these kids today, how many classes do you want to take? How many majors do you want? You can create your own major at some universities. I mean, it's to the point where they're paralyzed with choice, and they're paralyzed with the fear of what the consequence may be, and failing to realize that they are so able to deal with consequences if they believe in themselves. But instead, they don't ever want to experience. They hate criticism. They can't stand getting feedback because I can't handle that. I can't handle that.
No, you're right. And can I add a third item to your list?
Yeah.
You know about FOMO, fear of missing out.
Yeah.
Well, now there's a term I'm hearing teenagers use called FOMO, fear of messing up.
Yeah.
There is such a fear of failure in today's generation that it will paralyze them sometimes from even putting out the effort. Now, nobody likes to fail. I don't like to fail. But I'm telling you, wouldn't you say the greatest lessons we ever learned in our life was when we failed and we got back up and said, what do I need to do now?
If you're talking about FOMO, I'm thinking about, I think it was Lethal Weapon that coined the term FUBU, right? F'd up beyond belief. And I think it was FUBU. I think that's right. But anyway, Fubar, but all recognition.
Right.
Yeah. And it's like we instead looked at that and said, hey, we'll put it back together. We'll put the pieces back together. We'll deal with it, right? But you're so true. Right. These kids don't realize they're built for the storm. And the first win they get, they freak out. We got to do better. That's why I think.
Go ahead. No, go ahead and finish your thought.
And I think that's why we're losing competitiveness in kids. Because if they can't know they're going to win, that endurance is so hard for them.
Yeah. Well, it's why Angela Duckworth wrote that great book called Grit. It's just a matter of we've got to rebuild this sense that you are actually anti-fragile by nature. Yeah. Human being. Watch a toddler learn to walk. They fall down, bruise their knee, bruise their arm, and they get right back up. We naturally anti-fragile. We adults have made them fragile.
Yeah.
And by the time they get to a coach, you often have a emotionally great potential, but emotionally fragile young adult because we did it to them.
Yeah. There's a
So I
great
have
book
said
about
for
Fragile.
years,
Yeah.
let's build the child for the path, not the path for the child.
I
Let's
love that.
do that. Let's get this right. Yeah.
I got a habitude for you. Okay. And you can steal
Okay.
it. And you probably already
All
have
right.
it. So I grew up in South Louisiana. So we use cast iron pots. And what makes cast iron pot so great is that it can endure any kind of heat, but it also brings the past flavorings into the current experience.
Ooh, I love that.
And I always tell our people, it doesn't matter what your past is, it's going to contribute to the current moment you have now.
Yeah.
So don't live in your past as if it's an award. Live in your past as how it contributes to the current, what you're making now. It can handle the heat. That's why you've never seen a cast iron pot break because of heat.
Yeah. No, I love it. That's brilliant. And I love the double layer there. It can stand the heat, any heat,
Yeah.
and everything that's been done in the past, that flavor comes out. You and I both know if we look back at our careers and our lives, everything's been used to build us into the people we are today.
100%.
And we need to see the longer term and say, well, we're going to lose some games, but by golly, we're going to learn everything we can from it. And we're going to graduate great people. I know I keep going back to this. Great people that we're proud of to have represented our institutions.
Well, thank you for coming on the podcast. Thanks for finally meeting. I'm gonna come over to Atlanta one day. We're gonna find a time when our crazy schedules meet. It maybe in Atlanta Crown Room, but
I would love that. That would be fun.
Let's do that. And thank you again for what you're doing. And tell our listeners how they can learn more about you, get involved, bring you to your schools, and so on.
Yeah, you betcha. Well, first of all, Brett, I'm honored to be with you today. We love working with athletic departments. If you went to our website, that's the simplest way to find everything, growingleaders.com. And we have Habitudes, that content for conversations between coaches and athletes. We do events. We do come out and do events on your campus. And then I'd love, once again, real quick, if you're interested in this whole idea of student engagement and ownership, December 2 and 3, right here in Atlanta, Georgia, at our offices. We have a training room.
Game that weekend, isn't there?
Yes, maybe, just maybe.
Yeah, just
but
maybe.
It's Sunday and Monday.
Okay.
Yeah, so Sunday afternoon to Monday afternoon, just 24 hours. But we're going to have some of the best D1 programs across the country just talking about how do we do best practices to engage athletes. We'd love to have listeners come if that intrigues them. So growingleaders.com.
Thank you again, and keep up the great work, and keep up. I love when somebody, I think in analogies, my mom thinks in pictures, and so we communicate, we connect. You're so visual and so picture-based, and your combination of those two, and I think it's awesome. Great communicator and a great platform. Thanks again, Doc.
My pleasure. Thanks for what you do too. Let's go change the world.
Absolutely. Thank you.